Today we're going to start Mem Zayin Amud base 47b. The two dots. Chayiv Mzenisah. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. This festival learning we should have the base of Migdash immediately. Okay. It says that a father gets certain benefits from his daughter. Once she gets married, then the husband gets these benefits and obligations as well. What are the benefits and obligations? Well, first of all, he can eat the fruits of her property, and his obligation is that he has to feed her, redeem her, and he has to pay for her burial. So the Gemara says, the obligations are corresponding to the benefits that he gets. So, example number one, he has to feed her. That's an obligation, but he also gets benefits because her income belongs to him. So that is corresponding to that. The income that she brings into the family then becomes the obligation on the husband to feed her. Then it says kurasa, her burial, tachas kesubasa. That's in place of her kesuba. Now, the kesuba, there's two parts to the kesuba. What we really mean over here is not the kesuba when he dies, she ends up with money. The kesuba over here means that at the marriage, she brings in a nadunya. She brings in a dowry. So that, which is written in the kesuba. He inherits that dowry if she passes away, but at the same time, he also has to bury her, pay for the burial. Okay, then it goes on, this price, and it says, Lafikach ba'alei peres. Therefore, the husband is allowed to eat the produce of her property. Well, the Gemara asks right away, Peres man dacher shmaya. Who mentioned the produce of her property? That wasn't even, where did that show up? Gemara says, the Bryce is missing words, we have to add in some words, and we adjust the Bryce to make it fit with this. It says, she gets fed from her husband, tachas ma'aseh, that's in place of the income that she brings in. So she works, the money goes to the husband's bank account, and then the husband feeds her. Per koina, her redemption, tachas peres. Okay, we didn't mention that before, right? We didn't mention the redemption. So we're adding that in. She gets redeemed if it's taken captive. And what is that in place of? What benefit does the husband get that he should have that obligation? That's because when she brings in property, he gets to eat the produce of her property. And then
property she owns.
Yeah, we were quoting this Gemara before, that she brings in property. The husband gets to use that property, reap the benefits of the property, but in that, corresponding to that, he has to redeem her if she gets taken captive. You see, there's a detail here that's coming up. Ukurasa and her burial, tachas kesubasa is corresponding to the ksuba, which we said meant the dowry that she brings in. Lafikach ba'alei peres. Therefore, the husband eats the produce. Gemara says, "My lafika." Before we asked, who mentioned the fruits? Now we say, "What do you mean, therefore?" So the Gemara says, "Well, let me explain what the therefore is." Mahu detema. You could have said, "Mechalin le'nechlino, anuche nanachino." He should not eat the produce of her property. He should leave it. Keep it in a savings account. And Dimkain Mimnavle Parat. We have a concern that maybe if he's going to spend that money, then when it comes time for her to be redeemed, he's not going to have the money. Or maybe he's just going to say, we should make him save it for her. That's what it should belong to. Kamash Malan. So we say we'd rather not do that. We'd rather let him spend it. The ha'adifa, it's better that we let him spend it. The zimnin delay malu parak lamididei. Maybe her money won't be enough to cover the redemption. And if you're going to say don't spend that money because that's the savings, that's the insurance to ensure that she gets redeemed, maybe there won't be enough money in there, and then he's just going to leave her and wait for that money to come in. So we say no, you spend that money. When she needs to be redeemed, you have to use your own money to redeem her. We'd rather that he have the obligation to redeem her regardless of how much money is in that savings account. So therefore we say spend it, it's yours, you keep it.
But why don't you say spend it, invest it? So that you make, if you spend it, it sounds like, you're blowing the money. If you use it, you might make, put down the down payment on
Right.
something that you sell and get a stock.
Right. They didn't have mutual funds back then.
They have property that went down.
Yeah.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Why-
That's what it means. It means that he can spend it, means he can invest it also. That's the idea.
Make more sense.
We have a family story that they were in the I don't know, it was a circus or theater or something, and one of the kids said, shouted out in front of everyone, "I don't want my quarter going to mutual funds. I want to buy popcorn." The quiet theaters. And yeah. Okay. It wasn't with me, it was before my times. But, okay. Amar Rava. Rava says, I'm sorry, I skipped something. I skipped the line. Ve'ipachana. Why are we making this correspond one to another? That he has to feed her, that's in place of her income. Maybe it should be different. Maybe she brings in property. He gets to eat the produce of that property. And because of that, he has to feed her. What does it have to do with her daily income that she's working? I mean, how did you match this up like this? Maybe it should be matched up differently. So Amar Abaya tiknu matzah lematzah v'sheina matzah l'sheina matzah. We put the most common with the most common. Income for her to get is common, and food for her to have to eat is common. For her to have to be redeemed is not so common, that she should be taken captive. And also, one more point here is that for her to be independently wealthy, to actually bring in property to the marriage, is also not so common. So her redemption and her property that she's bringing in is not so common. So that's why they put that together. Okay. Amar Rava. Rava now says the following brisa, Haitana Savar Mezainis Midei Raisa. What we were saying so far is that feeding his wife seemed to be a takana that the Rabbanan instituted. However, the following brisa says that feeding his wife is a biblical law. The Tanya was taught in the brisa. She'era, what it says in the pasuk is that if he should take another wife unto his first wife, I think over there was the girl, that the maidservant that he was going to marry. But if he should take on another wife, he cannot take away from his obligations to his first wife, which is she'era ksusa and ainasa. Now, what is she'era ksusa and ainasa? Her she'er, her clothing. That's obvious. Ksusa is clothing, and ainasa. What are those things? So it goes like this: she'era elam mezainas. She'era means her food. We're on Mem Zayin and Bez. It also says Vasher achlu she'erami, that they ate the flesh of my nation. She'er means flesh, but over here it's being used as food. So we're saying that she'er means food. Ksusa, timashma, ksusa means clothing, that we know. And ainasa, what does it mean, ainasa? Ainasa. It could mean the time, could mean affliction, could mean a response. Ainasa could mean different things. So the Gemara says, "Ainasa zu aina mura b'Torah." This is the time, which is a euphemism for marital relations, that the Torah gives, that which is specified in the Torah. Where's it specified in the Torah? I guess how often he's supposed to have relations with him. And we have a pasuk even that uses this term, imtanas b'naisai. If you should afflict my daughters. This is Lavan telling Yaakov that do not afflict my daughters with me, do not withhold marital relations. Now, it turns out like this. This is really saying the opposite. It's not the marital relations, it's the lack of marital relations, right? So, right, Taisus mentions that. He says you should not cause the affliction by withholding marital relations. That's the okay. Rabbi Lazar has a different shot in this pasuk. She'er zu aina. She'er is the relations. We said before she'er was the food. He says she'er is b'cheinu aimer. Ish shall kol she'er b'sar le'sikra v'legali serva. A man to his close relative. It's used as she'er b'sari. It's close to his flesh. Le'sikra v'legali serva. He should not have relations. Well, he should not uncover the nakedness. Well, it's being used, the word share is being used in the context of relations. Ksusa is kamashmai, that we know what it means. That means clothing. Ainasa, the time is really elam mezainas. This is food. Last week's passion. That he afflicted you and he caused you to be hungry by the man. Afflicted by the man, right? Because they couldn't see the food, right? So this is talking about food. We have this in the context of food. Okay, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Eimer, he has a different shot. She'era ksusa, you have to read it together. She'era ksusa. The flesh, we said she'er means flesh. Ksusa, clothing. And what it's supposed to be is lefum she'era ten ksusa. According to the flesh, you should give her clothing. Don't give child clothing to an older woman, and not older woman's clothing to a child. Yeah, Rashi says wide clothing, an older woman wouldn't be able to handle, but a younger girl would like wide clothing. Whatever. What was the clothing man like Cinderella? You know, like the goes up. Oh. Yeah. I guess that's something like that. Right.
Yeah, that wasn't really like a Yiddish kind of fashion.
I think the fashion was always.
I think there was a fashion. I think the Yids couldn't afford that.
Yeah.
No, we always had the same fashion that they had. We're just like 20, 50 years late, but we were always following something like that. Look, our black hat is clearly following we're just 50 years late. And the Strimo is just 300 years late. Yeah, something, same thing. Okay.
So it doesn't require offensive thought. It was just.
This is
Tell you what I'm sneaking on. How could Rabbi Elazar come up with these solutions? What looks like a very simple sentence.
Yeah, apparently it's not so simple. She'er, what does she'er mean? I mean, the pasuk is very, ambiguous here.
Well, no, it says, okay, we don't know what it means, but they're these separate ideas. How can they say air really is kesubos? I'm just wondering how do they come up with this?
Because
I was thinking about it.
she'er ksusa, he's learning it as two nouns, and we taught the way he's learning it is that it means the clothing of her flesh, and the word of gets inserted in between two nouns.
He's saying doing two things.
The clothing of her flesh.
Something the sense.
Yeah.
Doing two things.
Right. Well, now he goes on. He's it's also a drasha, so it doesn't have to be the. Because now look at what he does now. Ksusa v'inasa. What does this mean? Clothing and time. L'fum v'inasa ten ksusa. According to the time, you should give the clothing. I mean, seasonal clothing. Shouldn't give the new clothes in the winter and the worn out clothes. I'm sorry, the new clothes in the summer and the worn out clothes in the winter. You should give the new clothes for the winter. And then when it's all worn out, then you have it in the summer. It's lighter. It's cooler. Okay. Tani Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef taught, is Rabbi Yosef Namaira, right before we had a brisa. She'era zukirav basar. When it says she'era, which we said before meant food, and then we had another pshat that she'era meant relations. Rabbi Yosef says she'era is the bodies being close. Shliyinig b'minig persiyim. They should not behave like the Persians behave. That they have relations while they're dressed. Rav Huna, and this supports what Rav Huna taught. Rav Huna was earlier. Rav Huna, if a man says that the only way that I can have relations with his wife is that he's going to be dressed and she's going to be dressed, then they get divorced. She can say, I don't want that. Yeah. Yotziv nice and ksuba. And she gets a ksuba. She's not considered that she's like a meredes or something, the woman that rejects her husband. It's not considered like that.
16.
Do you have it? No, that's your own. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Afilu ani sheb'Yisrael chulu." Morning. Rabbi Yehuda says that even a poor person, that we're quoting in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says that even a poor person has to supply for his wife 2 flutes and also a woman to cry at the funeral. Talking about that the husband is obligated to bury her. What else does he have to do at the funeral? Like what standard does he have to have? There should be at least 2 flutes there and a woman to cry.
They used to play music.
Yeah, it was like sad music,
It's interesting because we just buried my father-in-law in LA. So before we started the halacha part, we had 2 people from the Navy and in whites, a flag was up, and they played taps. And just listening to the taps made me cry. So, and I'm saying, boy, this is like such a good part, but it was that honorable for
Right.
him, So
Right.
I hear this makes me feel.
Yeah. On the other hand, now we say now the Goyim are 1,000 years behind. Okay.
You
They
should
say-
fold the flag.
Oh,
It
yeah.
makes folding the talus look
Yeah.
ridiculously simple.
Yeah. It's like a little triangle.
Yeah.
Triangle and then, Mama,
Yeah.
they would be great in the back of shul on Shabbos.
Did he serve?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Active,
Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, "Afilu ani sheb'Yisrael chulu." Rabbi Yehuda says even a poor person has to supply this for his wife's funeral. Mechlal, this implies the Tanakama Savar Haniloi. Rabbi Yehuda is saying this. When the Mishnah says that Rabbi Yehuda has a statement, that means that the first opinion did not hold of that. So, hey Chidami, what's going on over here? What's the case where the Tanakama says that it's not necessary to supply this for the wife? Rabbi Yehuda is the Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lai, is a student of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's in the center. The Tanakama just means the first opinion. We don't have a name attributed to that. They assume usually it's Reb Meir, but well, hey Chidami, what's the case? Ida Orcha, if that would be her custom, in other words, that's the way it goes in her family, that they always have flutes and someone that cries, my time of the Tanakama Damalai. So why would the Tanakama say that he doesn't have to supply for her funeral what would be basic things that her family always has? My time of Rabbi Yehuda, and if it's not the way of her family, then why does Rabbi Yehuda say that he does have to supply it? The answer is that her family actually does not have that. but his family does. No, she married up. She married into a more prestigious family, and their funerals are more, elaborate. Well, Tanakama Savar Kiamrinan, the Tanakama holds, when do we say Oila imay veni yeredes imay, that when she marries more significant, she goes up together with him? Hani mili mechayim. That's only while she's alive. This is actually talking about if she doesn't want to nurse the baby, or she does want to nurse the baby, and he says that's how we do it, and she wants to get a wet nurse, all of that. Like, what is she allowed to claim over here? So there's a discussion about this, that she goes up to his standard, but that's only while she's alive. But afterwards, no. So when it comes to the funeral, she's not the wife anymore. She goes down to back to her family standards. And Rabbi Yehuda says no. Even after she passes away, she still has his standards. Very interesting machlekes.
No longer old. And 40, 50 years.
Right.
But is there an idea I've heard that ideally you should marry a woman that is below yours, like your standards?
No, I don't know if it always means that, but it does. There is a statement of nechais darga nesivitza. You step down to get married. Yeah.
Makes it a lot easier because you wouldn't have to whatever you do is bring her up. Otherwise, you hear about these guys who marry people brought up with silver spoons or used to someone they're struggling their whole lives for their wives.
Right. And Dr. Stein says it's a good recommendation also. It's easier on the
It only works the first year.
Okay, so we have this machlekes spelled out for us. Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Mar Ukva, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, Rav Chisda says in the name of Mar Ukva. Mar Ukva, I believe, was the in charge of the Bezdin. And we had before that he was, I think, the Reish Galusa, and he was in charge of the Bezdin. He said, Mar Ukva said the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. That means that her standards gets raised even after she passes away. She still the husband still is obligated to treat her the way the way his family is treated. Amar Rav Chisda Amar Marukva. Rav Chisda also says the name of Marukva. Mishin Shtata. Let's say there's a husband that goes crazy. He goes insane. Well, Bezdin Yarden lenachasav zanin u'mafarnas in asishtei banav u'bnaisav v'davaracher. The Bezdin goes into his property, and they take from it food to support his wife, his children, and something else. Sounds like a pet, but we'll see what it is. Amar, what is that? Something else. Amar le Ravina le Ravashi. Ravina says to Ravashi, 1 second. Maishna meditanya. 1 second. It contradicts to what the Brisa says. Mishalach le Medina Sayam. Let's say there's a husband that went on a faraway trip. The husband, he didn't leave her with food, so she goes to the Bezdin, and she says, "I need food from my to survive." Husband left. Well, Bezdin Yarden lenachasav is unparnases ishtay.
Recording in progress.
The Bezdin goes down to the property, and they start to sell off possessions to get food for the wife, but not for the children and for something else. So what's going on? When he goes insane, the Bezdin feeds the children and something else as well, and otherwise it's just the wife. Ravashi says to Ravina, you don't see the obvious difference. He didn't go insane willingly. Maybe I don't know if it works like that, but he only went on a trip willingly. So he goes on a trip willingly. So then they'll go down and supply for his wife, but not for the children. Well, the children survive. They'll have to go beg. he's actually not really obligated to support the children after a certain age. So it's talking about that. The custom is that he does, but he doesn't have an obligation to. So therefore, they don't take for that obligation. However, if he went crazy, then they will take. So the explanation for this is like this, that we have to make assumptions of what the husband would have wanted if we would be able to ask him.
No, look on the screen.
Yeah, I see.
You have a document. People can see who else is.
Yeah, very good. So if he went insane, the assumption that we're going to make is that I can't hear. Yeah, the assumption that we're going to make is that he would have wanted to support his children, but when he leaves and he doesn't set up any support, so then it seems that he's telling us that he didn't want that. So therefore, we'll only provide for the wife. Seems to tell us he doesn't want for the wife either, but we don't give him that option. When it comes to the minhag, we give him the option. Okay, my davar acher. What is the other thing that we said that we can take or we don't take? Rav Chisda Amar zeh tachshit, talking about perfume for his wife, or ornaments or perfume, jewelry, or
We take those
Rashi
things
says it's a
and,
type
sell
of
it
perfume.
for some of her belongings.
We take some of his belongings and to buy her perfume.
Oh,
Rabbi Yosef Amar tzedakah. Rabbi Yosef says it's to give tzedakah.
Saying Basin is gonna take her jewelry.
No,
no.
talking about
Sorry.
going into the husband's property, start selling off items to be able to provide for her food and for something else. Well, what's that something else? Also for her perfume or jewelry.
Well, it says that like
He needs the perfume,
doesn't it say like for your wife you have to supply clothing,
Right.
lotions, and
Now here, the husband is not available.
right, it seems
So-
as if like that is like completely necessary, like to have jewelry, etc.
Right, right.
So
Jewelry is considered essential for her.
Yeah, but on the other hand, though, we have
for
to,
someone.
if he went insane, we do take for the jewelry. If he didn't go insane, if he just left town, then we don't take for the jewelry, because he would have set up a fund that she should be able to have jewelry or perfume for. He didn't set it up, so that means he's not providing it. We can't make the assumption that that's what he would have wanted.
This concept of jewelry related to the reason that it's carried on Shabbat.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's considered a normal thing for them, but there's other complications there. Do they take it
Yeah.
off for the mikveh and the things and show it to the friends and all that type of stuff? Yeah. Okay, Rabbi Yosef Amar tzedakah. Rabbi Yosef says to give for tzedakah. Well, Mandamar Tachshit, the one that says that you don't provide the perfume, Kolshkin tzedakah, for sure you don't sell money for tzedakah. You don't sell his possessions to give tzedakah. Mandamar tzedakah, the one that says that you'll even take for tzedakah, Aval Tachshit Yavinala. I'm sorry, that you don't take for tzedakah, you don't take for tzedakah, but for the perfume, Yavinala, you do give her. He doesn't want his wife to be disgusting. I guess perfume was something that was common, so that they shouldn't smell or whatever. So doesn't want it to smell. There's another way of reading this Gemara, which Rashi mentioned, but we did fine. The other way is like exactly the opposite with a different gear set slightly. Okay, Amar Rav Chia bar Rav and Amar Rav Huna. Rav Chia bar Rav says the name of Rav Huna. Misha halach leMedina Sayam. It's the one that went away on a trip. Medina Sayam means a distant journey. Overseas. Doesn't have to be overseas, it just means distant. But then his wife passed away while he was away. So Bezdin Yardal and Achasav Lafik Kvaidai. The Bezdin goes down to his property. He starts selling off things to make some money for the funeral. And the funeral is going to be according to his honor. The Gemara says, well, Lafik Kvaidai, Lafik Kvaida. for his honor, but not for her honor. That means his standards, not her standards. Ema is and we said before, the problem with this is that we said before that there was a machlekes if she gets elevated to his standards even after she passes away. But everyone agrees that she can't be lowered than her standards, than her own standards. She always has to have her standards. Question if she goes up. The Gemara says, Ema aflafi kvaydei. No. Of course she has her standards. Question is if she also has his standards, if she goes higher. And we're saying that she does go higher. Which is exactly the way we said was the view of Rabbi Yehuda, which is the way we said that Mar Ukva Paskan like, which is perfect. Amar Rav Masna. Rav Masna says, I think he was a student of Shmuel. Ha'imar, if someone that says on his deathbed, in Mesa, if his wife dies, leitik room in a chasav, don't use my property for her burial.
Wow.
This is what he's concerned about on his deathbed. He's dying. I guess he's concerned about his children's inheritance. He doesn't want his wife to use that up on the funeral, on her own funeral. Shaimanlai, we listened to him. Now the explanation for this is that, well, she already took a ksuba. So he dies. She takes all the ksuba. She takes the ksuba, and now she wants to come back for she doesn't come back. She wants to be buried with his own, with the estate, and not with the money that she already took. So he's taking a second time, right? So the Gemara says, "My shna ki amar de nafli nichse kamiyasmi ki leyamar nami nichse kamiyasmi ramo." My shna ki amar. That's what you have to put the comma. My shna ki amar. What's the difference if he makes a statement? She has no rights to come back and to say anything and to take money from the estate, from the orphans. Why does he have to make a statement? Don't bury my wife from my estate. Even if he doesn't say anything, you don't bury her from the estate. It's not her money. She took the ksubma. Why does he have to make a statement? The Gemara says, you're right, that's a problem. Ela ha'imar, rather we have to switch this whole statement around. Really what happened was, im meishu leitikru min achasav. You're supposed to listen to the words of the dying person. So he gave instructions that he should not be buried from his own possessions. What happens now? Well, he'll have to go to the Chevra Kadisha, and they have like this fund that they for the people that don't have, and they'll bury it's going to have to get buried. The community fund will have to bury him. So because he gave instructions, don't bury me from any of my possessions. So if he says that, ain't shameless, we don't listen to him. Stop. It stops it. We don't listen to him. We take from his possessions. The Gemara says the explanation, it's not correct that he should make his sons wealthy and impose himself on the community. Yeah.
Walmart.
It's funny,
What was that?
Walmart.
Illegal
It says,
thing
we're not gonna
all
pay with living wage.
You'll get welfare.
Yeah.
Your food stamp. Is that really how they do it?
But you pass it on as low prices to drive the other guy out of business. That's the way they do it. They take from their workers. They make the community fund pay for their workers.
The accountant doesn't agree that it's not so simple.
Is
Okay.
it? I just came across in English. It sounds like the law to a modified endowment contract. CPA, is that kind of what this is? Have you ever heard of it?
Okay.
This is a big issue with Medicaid also,
That what?
where people transfer their funds to
Oh.
their children, and then they receive Medicaid. They get
Uh-huh.
free nursing home and things like that.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Not so easy. Can't be done.
Is that illegal or is that just not ethical?
Wasn't there an age cap?
I don't think it's illegal.
It's not illegal. They give the
I
money,
think-
it's not theirs. Good.
They look back. The last time I checked, I think it's like if you did this kind of manipulation.
Oh, you have to do it earlier.
within 6 months.
You have to give a delay of 6 months.
No way, Jose.
Uh-huh. Okay, the Mishnah says, La'ilam hi b'shus ha'av ad shetikanes l'rishus habal and nesuin. We had a whole bunch of obligations that the father has for the daughter, not for the wife. Going back to the daughter. Well, he's gonna get her. He can marry her off, and Hafaras Nadarim, I guess. And what about Truma? Can she eat Truma if her husband's gonna be a Kayan? So the Mishnah over here says she's in the father's jurisdiction until she enters the husband's house, Linasuin, for the actual marriage. Notice the Arison doesn't switch that. The betrothal doesn't switch it. What switches her over to the husband regarding Truma at least would be the Nisuin itself. She has to actually move into his house. Nisuin is either chuppah or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Chuppah represents.
Masar Av l'shluchei habal. The father gave her over to the messengers of the husband. Husband didn't show up to the wedding. He sent messengers, or he sent messengers to go bring her to the wedding, which is going to be in his town, let's say. So Harei b'shus habal, the father handed her over to the husband's messengers. So he paid for the Uber. So she's now b'shus habal. She left the father's house. Let's say the father goes along with the messengers. Let's say not the messengers of the father goes along with the messengers of the husband. She still has not left his jurisdiction. If the messengers of the father give her over to the messengers of the husband, there's an exchange over there. This messenger to those messengers, right? The original people are not even here. His father and the husband aren't here. It's just messenger to messenger. So then she's handed over to the messengers. She's in the husband's jurisdiction. Well, yeah, what would happen if it was on Shabbos?
I don't remember. I just remember the last answer. Someone said it's okay with messages.
Oh.
Messenger. It was
Yeah,
one of those things I couldn't make out what you guys were.
rub it in. Oh, yeah. That was Danielle's comment
I
yesterday.
remember.
Yes, it was on the.
I couldn't hear
He was on the.
on the computer. That's even worse. Oh my God. Daniel, speak up.
Like the Stein is saying that he couldn't hear your comment yesterday
Oh,
about
sorry.
on Shabbos using a messenger. Yeah. Okay. But you knew enough to be able to say that that was.
I remember you said. Put it in your book.
All right. Okay, the Gemara asks, "My la'ilam." What does it mean, la'ilam? She's forever. She's in the possession of the father, in the jurisdiction of the father, until she's handed over to the husband. It says, "Lafukim mi Mishnah Rishayna." It's coming to exclude. There was the first version of a Mishnah. The Tanan. At the beginning of the Masechta, we had a discussion about if he set up a time for the marriage, and for whatever reason he doesn't show up, his obligation to feed her already starts from the designated time, if you remember this. Well, what would happen regarding Truma? It says in that Mishnah that she begins eating Truma as well, coming to tell us now that that's not so. He actually has to enter into the Rishus of the Baal, not just the time to when it's supposed to be entered. It's lafuke, that Mishnah. Lafuke means to exclude. Let's say the father gives her over to the messengers of the husband. So now she's in the jurisdiction of the husband. Amar Rav comments on this. Well, masirta lakol chutz mitruma. This works for everything except for truma. What is the everything else? Well, that would mean that he would inherit her already. Remember, that was a discussion we had. And he starts to acquire also her income. So no, now it's because the father handed her over to the messengers of the husband. However, the one detail that doesn't take place is that because she didn't enter the chuppah yet, she can't eat truma. Ravasi amarafli truma. Ravasi says no, she can eat truma. Now, let me give you the explanation for this. There's a machlekes in the Gemara later. What's the reason why she can't eat truma from the betrothal? One explanation is that after the betrothal, she's going to get married. Now, when she enters into his house, he may see a big blemish on her and say, I didn't know about this. The betrothal is off. The marriage is off. And then if that's the case, she had eaten truma already all that time, and she wasn't even, the whole marriage was nullified because he didn't bring her into the house. Could be he didn't even see it. But
so she needs a get.
She needs a get. Well, no, he's going to say it's a mekach. She had such a blatant blemish that the whole marriage was up.
Oh.
That's one reason why she can't eat truma until the chuppah.
Wait, why can't you say she was in the cheskas kashrus in the interim?
Yeah, but he was sold an item that
But you
wasn't.
didn't know that till later on?
He didn't know it till later, so the whole it's off. It wasn't disclosed.
You go in the kosher butcher, they sell you food has
Spoiled.
extra on it, and you go eat it. Then later on, they find out, like, as unfortunately,
Right.
something
No,
negative.
That's
all right?
because maybe they didn't know about it. They didn't know. Over here, she has a mum. She has a blemish.
So
It wasn't
she was
disclosed. Yeah, of
purposely
course, no,
hiding.
yeah. So the whole marriage would be off. Right? They sell you food that's spoiled. You'd say, that's not what I wanted. Right? So, oh yeah.
There was something about his wife that wasn't disclosed.
I know by the Chasnish there was something like that.
Yeah,
Right.
I heard of those.
So you didn't get married?
He married her anyway.
I think that was by
The problem that wasn't disclosed came up again and they couldn't catch up.
no, so that wasn't some Sefer. They had children. Some Sefer. So
He married second after she died.
oh,
He married, she got his daughter.
oh,
He was very successful.
very interesting. Okay, Ravasi on the other hand, so that would be the explanation of Rav. Ravasi on the other hand says that no, she can eat truma. Ravasi's explanation of what's the reason why she should not eat truma until she's in her husband's household, until she's already married. That's because she may be handed a cup of wine that's truma and pass it on to her brothers and for them to take a sip. And if she's still in her father's house, that would be problematic. But over here, the father already gave her over. So Ravasi says there's no problem. Ravuna asked Ravasi a question. Ravuna is a student of Rav. I think Ravasi is also. But V'amilachia barav Ravasi. And some say Rechia barav, that's his son, asked Ravasi. What are you saying? When he hands her over to the messengers, that's already considered married, even for Truma. I have a Mishnah that says not like that. She has to enter into the chuppah. Amalu Rav le'aminu lechu le'tizlu basaribcha. So Rav was listening to this conversation between his son, possibly, or students, and he says, "Did I not tell you? Don't follow these. Don't go bring proofs from ambiguous statements. Basar ibcha means something that could be switched this way or that way. He can answer you. Handing her over is considered the chuppah. He handed her over to the husband's messengers. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says lirushasa. Shmuel now says that handing her over to the husband is only regarding inheritance. That means that the husband would inherit her. but not for truma and not for other things. There's only that one item that happens when there's an exchange between the father's messengers or the husband's messenger, that she gets handed over. It's just that the husband now inherits her the dowry if she would pass away. Rish Lakish Amar l'ksuba. Rish Lakish says for the ksuba. Now the problem with that statement is ksuba samayi. What are you talking about, ksuba? What ksuba? The Mesa Yarisla, that he inherits her? Haina de Shmuel. That's exactly what Shmuel said, that he inherits her, the dowry. Okay, Amar Ravina says, Laimar, Ksubasa me'acher mana. Ravina says that what Rish Lakish meant was that if the husband then passed away, and she would want to get remarried, her ksuba would now go down from 200 to 100 because she's now a widow, not from the betrothal, but she's a widow from the marriage because she was already handed over to the husband, even though she's still a virgin. But a widow, the ksuba goes down to 100. Okay, that's Ravina's pshat in what Rish Lakish meant, ksubasa. Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Chanina, Damitavai Masir Telakol Aflachuma. Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Chanina say no. What the Mishnah said is literal. Handed over means handed over. She goes under the jurisdiction of the husband, 100%, even for truma. Meisvei, the Gemara has a question. Halachavim shluchei abal. Let's say the father was going together with the messengers of the husband. Or the messengers were going over. She owned a Airbnb along the way while they're traveling with the husband. They didn't go to the wedding yet, but they went in there just to rest. So they went into the house. It's not talking about relations. It's talking about they went into her house alone, I guess. But he brought her into her house. That's chuppah. Chuppah means brings her into his house. This is her house. Even though the dowry was already delivered into the husband's house back in the other city. So Mesa, and she passed away, Avia Yarsha, the father takes the dowry back because they never went into his house. They went into her house. Let's say the father gave her over to the messengers. Or the messengers gave her over to the messengers. Or there was Airbnb courtyard or something along the way that belonged to him, to the husband. And they went in because for the marriage. It said, I'm taking you into my house. That means that's the chuppah. Even though the dowry was not delivered yet into his possession, Mesa, and she passed away by Liyasha, the husband inherits her because they went into his house. This is only regarding inheritance. But when it comes to truma, she doesn't need the truma until she goes into the actual chuppah, until the actual wedding. This wasn't really the wedding. The Gemara says, tiyufta the kula tiyufta. This is a question on everyone. What do you mean everyone? Anyone that doesn't say like Shmuel. Here we said clearly, Shmuel says that it's only for inheritance that she's being handed over, and that's what's happening here. Being handed over only for inheritance, not for truma. There were other statements here that said for truma as well, or for other things other than truma. The Gemara says, 1 second, hagufa kasha. There's a contradiction here. Amrit nichnasim alolin. They went inside to rest. It's talking about her property. Taima delalin. What's the reason why it's not considered a marriage? Because they just went in to rest. It wasn't considered a chuppah. Hastama. But if they didn't say why they're going in, they said, let's go into rest. They didn't say we're going into rest. They said, we're just going in. Let's go in. L'shem nesuin. That would imply that would be an actual marriage. The problem is that if you read the second part of the Braisa, Eima Seifa, Nichnasim l'shem nesuin. They went in for the sake of the marriage. It's his house now. Hastama, so that was considered a marriage. Hastama, but if they wouldn't say anything, then it would be lalin. It would be just to rest. So there's a contradiction on the implication of each statement. What's implied? It's called diyukim seiser. The implication is contradicting. This one implies that if there's no statement that it's for nesuin, and this one implies if there's no statement, it's just to rest. Where it says Amar Ravashi stami ktani. What actually is it's saying is that what we would assume if there was no statement made at all. It's not saying that there was a statement. We're saying what would be the default. It goes like this. Stam chatzedida. If it was her property, then it's lul, and then it's just the rest. But stam chatzedidei, but if it's his property, and without any statement, we would say linasuin. That would be for the wedding. Okay. Let's leave it over here by Tana.
Wow. Thank you.
Isn't a little bit confusing. He
Almost caught up.
she's sent with the shluchei abal, right? But then the baal shows
Yeah.
up.
But then,
But then the husband actually shows up.
so really, what was going on there was there were more than one case.
James?
It was this option, this option, this option.
Oh,
Either he handed
Ah,
over shluchei abal, or they went into the house, or it was an or, not an and.
Oh, okay. Okay, guys.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
Have a good day.
Bye. Have a great day.
Both of-
So